Durbin blasting him for misrepresenting what he said during an Oval Office meeting on DACA as a government shutdown looms with still no deal for Dreamers in sight.
Griff Jenkins joins us now live from Washington with the very latest on this continuing saga. Hey, Griff.
Rob and Jillian, good morning. What a difference a week makes. Remember watching President Trump negotiating in real time with the Democrats for nearly an hour last week? Now the president says Democrats don't even want to make a deal, as Senator Dick Durbin and the president are caught in a war of words over what the president did or did not say in that Oval Office meeting. And now we have a new nickname. The president tweeting, Senator Dickie Durbin totally misrepresented what was said at the DACA meeting. Deals can't get made when there is no trust. Durbin blew DACA and is hurting our military. But Durbin, responsible for revealing the S-hole controversy in the first place, is vigorously defending his allegations.
I know what happened. I stand behind every word that I said. In terms of that meeting, I'm focused on one thing, not that meeting, but on making sure that those who are being protected by DACA and eligible for the DREAM Act have a future in America. I'm focused on that full time.
And if there is any hope left that the bipartisan DACA deal is possible, Rep. Martha McSally says Democrats need to get over the idea of a clean deal without the president's priorities.
There's no such thing as doing a clean DREAM Act. The Democrats need to get over it. It's not happening. We in our bill have come up with the president's priorities, the American people's priorities, and that should be a starting place for these negotiations.
Meanwhile, a growing list of Democrats led by Maxine Waters, you see them there, have announced they will boycott the president's State of the Union speech 2 weeks from tonight. Now, here's the deal. Bottom line, if there's no deal by Friday night and the Democrats refuse to support a funding bill as a result, we could be headed for a government showdown. The House GOP could try and pass something alone, but in the Senate, that's just not possible. They'll need 9 Democrats. So it's going to be an interesting week. 4 days left, guys.
And we've spent the last 3 months cutting up the wood there right behind Griff as we make this thing. And now we are hammering the wood into the wall. So that's going to be the next 3 months.
Hard at work.
That's right. We appreciate our viewers' patience with this ongoing construction project as we rebuild all of Washington, D.C.
Right on cue. There it was.
Thank you so much, Griff.
So once the clock strikes midnight on Friday, the battle to secure the border will likely turn into a battle over who's to blame for a government shutdown. That is, unless lawmakers strike a deal on immigration.
But Fox News politics editor Chris Stirewalt is predicting the clock is going to run out before Congress comes to any kind of compromise. But he says it just might be the pressure that lawmakers need to get a deal done.
A government shutdown is like a war. Nobody really wins it, but somebody loses less than the other guy. I think, this is just my hunch here, I think we're going to have one. I think we're going to have a little one. I think this is a hot stove moment. It's fairly normal in that way because it is, you have to sometimes let lawmakers touch the hot stove and burn their hand. They say, well, we'll shut down. We won't do it. And then they do it. And then you see where the pressure really lies. And in this case, there's pressure on Republicans, big pressure because they control the White House, they control both chambers of Congress. It's their job to get it done and run what's supposed to be the ordinary business of government. But on the other hand, there's pressure on Democrats. There are not a lot of voters out there who are going to be happy if ordinary functions of the government are faltering while we're engaged in a fight over what are still, no matter how sympathetic their cases, people who are in the United States illegally.
Former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon set to take the stand today. He will testify behind closed doors as part of the House's investigation into alleged collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. He'll likely face questions about Michael Wolff's explosive book Fire and Fury, in which Bannon is quoted calling a 2016 meeting in Trump Tower with a Russian lawyer treasonous. White House Communications Director Hope Hicks could also testify as soon as Friday. Well, the White House set to release more details about President Trump's first physical exam as commander-in-chief today. Navy physician Dr. Ronnie Jackson said President Trump, who is 71 years old, is in excellent health after a checkup on Friday, but will provide a more in-depth update. Presidents are not required to undergo medical exams.
The top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee is urging Republicans to release all Fusion GPS transcripts. Adam Schiff wants the interview with Glenn Simpson, the co-founder of the firm behind the Russia dossier. to be released. Schiff saying, quote, in light of the selective leaks of Mr. Simpson's testimony and the misleading manner in which Fusion GPS's role has been characterized, I support releasing the transcript. This comes after Senate Judiciary Committee ranking member Dianne Feinstein, the Democrat, released Simpson's partially redacted interview with her panel last week.
A Fox News alert, a very disturbing report out of California. They're calling it a house of horrors. Several children found starving, chained to beds.
It's an unbelievable story. The parents arrested after one of their daughters, a brave young girl, escaped to call police. Todd Pyro is here with some very horrific details this morning. Todd.
Rob and Jillian, this is beyond upsetting. When officers went inside the home of David and Louise Turpin, they found several children shackled to beds with chains and padlocks in dark and foul-smelling surroundings. That's an exact quote from authorities. The parents, though, unable to explain why. Now, the investigation began after a 17-year-old girl escaped from the home in Paris, California, and called 911 early Sunday to report that her 12 brothers and sisters were being held by their parents. Investigators initially believed that girl was just 10 years old because she was so emaciated. And they also thought all the victims were kids, but eventually discovered that seven of them were adults. The sheriff's office said the victims appeared to be malnourished and very dirty. They were sent to local hospitals for treatment, but their conditions were not immediately known.
They were all in PJs because it was early in the morning. They were very, very pale skinned, almost like they've never seen the sun. But I've seen a couple of the older ones, so they all, and it was mostly girls, and then kind of small framed, I'd say kind of tiny, almost looked a little malnutritioned.
I always had a suspicion because that house never looked like there was a lot of action in front of it.
Los Angeles Times reported that the Turpin home's address was listed as a location of the Sandcastle Day School. That's a public K-12 institution that opened in 2011. Also, the New York Times reported that the Turpins filed for bankruptcy that same year. At that time, David Turpin worked as an engineer at Northrop Grumman. David and Louise Turpin, each being held on $9 million bail. Have not heard the last from this story.
So disturbing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Todd.
Todd, thanks.
We have some breaking news in the Fox News alert. 3 deputies shot and a suspect down overnight in South Carolina. Local media reporting the shooting happened during a raid in York County. That's about 40 miles south of Charlotte. Authorities have not yet said what the motive could be, and no word on the deputies or suspects' conditions. We will keep you updated when we get new information. Brand new video showing the horrific moments when 50 passengers are forced to jump into icy waters to escape a massive inferno on a casino boat. Officials say at least one woman has died, succumbing to her injuries hours after the emergency off the coast of Florida. 14 other people were hurt. The captain of the Santa Cruz casino boat now being hailed a hero for bringing the boat as close to shore as possible. A burned out hull is all that remains, with an American flag continuing to fly. The cause of the fire is unknown, but the company says the boat had no prior issues.
Well, North Korea still has not reacted to that false missile alert that came out of Hawaii over the weekend. That is according to U.S. Defense Chief General Jim Mattis. This comes after an emergency management employee claimed that he pressed the wrong button by mistake, which triggered an absolute panic in the state of Hawaii. General Mattis also expressing confidence that authorities in Hawaii will fix this warning system and put new procedures in place. Let's hope so.
The lead singer of the Irish rock group The Cranberries has died.
Do you have to let it linger? Do you have to? Do you have to? Do you have to let it linger?
An incredible voice. Dolores O'Riordan suddenly passed away in a London hotel right before a recording session. Her publicist says her family is, quote, devastated by this shocking news. No word on the cause of O'Riordan's death, but she did have a long history with depression. She was only 46 years old.
So young.
Yeah.
It is 11 minutes after the hour. Another lawmaker added to the list of Democrats boycotting President Trump's State of the Union. Is this really the best way to serve the American people? Former Trump campaign spokesperson Katrina Pearson weighs in next.
And a disturbing discovery, the X-ray revealing a scalpel left inside a veteran after surgery.
Build up our military bigger and better and stronger than ever before.
President Trump making it a priority to fight for America's heroes. The results they can see in their wallets thanks to our commander-in-chief. That's still to come. Democratic Senate Minority Whip Dick Durbin defending his allegations against President Trump on immigration.
But the president now hitting back, saying the Illinois senator misrepresented what he said.
So where do Republicans and Democrats go from here on making a deal? Here to weigh in is the spokesperson for America First Policies, Katrina Pearson. Thank you for joining us this morning, Katrina.
Good morning. Great to be here.
He said, she said. Where is this going to get us in the long term?
Well, I think this is actually designed not to get us anywhere, particularly on the topic of DACA. Senator Durbin is someone who was rebuked in 2013 by Obama's White House by, quote, inventing quotes, unquote. So this is not surprising for him to do this. He went into a meeting. He didn't get what he wanted to get. He didn't hear what he wanted to hear. And typical Democrats, they're really not interested in compromise. They want all or nothing. So Senator Durbin calls on his good amnesty friend, Lindsey Graham, who also didn't back him up, probably because Lindsey Graham called Mexico a hellhole on video.
Well, Katrina, I mean, I have to ask, if that's not what was said, obviously the president knows what he says, and you guys are in contact with him. What did the president say?
Well, obviously the president has denied it. He said that several times. He said it on Twitter. I don't even understand what the confusion is. Senator Durbin says he's heard.
What did he actually say?
Well, he was talking about certain conditions and how bad that they are. But this is what's interesting, why we're focusing on this particular word. Senator Durbin went on another network saying he's never heard such language from a president. I suggest we check the tapes. We can go back to Nixon. We can go to JFK. And if you want really racist remarks in the White House, let's go to LBJ. This is absolutely ridiculous. It's just a distraction from all of the amazing things that this president is accomplishing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, and we kind of touched on this yesterday, Rob. Katrina, I want to get your take. I guess a lot of people right now are wondering what we're missing in this conversation, because I think most people would agree that word in particular is not exactly racist.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not even directed at people with what he allegedly said. And no one is arguing the factual connotation that goes to these terrible countries who are really, really struggling. The bottom line is this is something that the left likes to do to Republicans when they don't get their way. They want to cry racism or sexism and try to bully the opposition into giving them what they want, and this time it's not going to work.
All right, well, here's a list of the senators that are going to boycott the State of the Union. Here we go right here. John Lewis, Democrat, Georgia, Pramila Jayapal, Frederica Wilson, Earl Blumenauer, and Maxine Waters. A lot of these people have hated the president since he got elected anyways, and even before that. But I want to ask you, I mean, you know, the he said and she said as we've gone through, I mean, until I see a tape or hear a tape of what happened, it doesn't even really matter anymore. The idea here is merit-based immigration, right? That's what we're trying to get done in the White House right now. That's what the administration wants. What exactly are the standards that the president would like to see for people that are coming into this country?
The president's standards have been the same ever since on the campaign. He wants a merit-based program. He wants to build the wall. He wants to increase border security.
But
Democrats,
give me, yeah, we know that. But give me the what kind of merit? What kind of standards exactly is he talking about?
Well, specifically, he wants people to come into this country who are bringing skills, people that can take care of themselves. He doesn't want chain migration either. And I think that's extremely important when we're having this discussion, because honestly, you can't have a discussion on whether it's bettering education or bettering the economy without fully addressing illegal immigration.
All right, Katrina Pearson, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
It is 18 minutes after the hour. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson intensifying efforts to isolate North Korea, devising ways to enforce sanctions. This as the State Department issues a brand new warning. We are live in Washington. Good morning. Welcome back. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson landing in Vancouver overnight. In just a few hours, he will meet with more than a dozen countries on how to fight back against North Korea's aggression.
And for anybody thinking of visiting North Korea, the State Department has a very ominous warning for you. Kelly Wright is live in Washington with the very latest on that. Hey, Kelly.
Yeah, I have to apologize, guys. We're having the same problem that Griff had over in Studio One. But let's get right to the point. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is serving as co-host of the Vancouver Summit. Now, the 20 nations involved in this are seeking strategy on how to enforce sanctions and further isolate North Korea. Two countries that are absent from this summit are Russia and China. In a statement, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau explained why, stating this: This is an opportunity to gather together a group of nations that are historically linked through the Korean War. That will be another piece we certainly hope and feel in the path towards resolving the conflict. As the summit gets underway, however, the State Department warns Americans who plan on traveling to the Hermit Kingdom to prepare for the worst. In other words, make funeral arrangements and draft a will before going. The dire warning underscores the escalating tensions the U.S. now has with North Korea, and on the heels of a false alert in Hawaii about an incoming ballistic missile on Saturday. Some congressional leaders are calling for direct talks between the U.S. and the North. Former UN Ambassador John Bolton, for example, says the U.S. must find a way to denuclearize North Korea.
It is right to be concerned about a possible North Korean threat, whether they push the wrong button in Hawaii or not. We've had too big a vacation for too long from people appreciating that rogue states with nuclear weapons can be a problem for the United States. That's why George W. Bush wanted national missile defense capabilities. That's why stopping North Korea, stopping Iran from getting nuclear weapons is so important.
Important indeed. Ambassador Bolton, in fact, adds the nations must seek a peaceful solution but keep a military option. Canadian officials, by the way, say they must also find a way to tone down the rhetoric like my nuclear button is bigger than your nuclear button. They believe that could escalate tensions. And Rob and Jillian, the sound you hear beneath me would be an indication of jobs, jobs, and more jobs.
You know what? That is a way to spin it. Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. All right, an Army veteran suing a VA hospital after a scalpel was left inside of him. Look at this. Glenford Turner discovering that scalpel after suffering from long-term abdominal pain. I would imagine so. Nearly 4 years after he had surgery in Connecticut. 4 years this was inside of him. He needed more surgery to have it removed. The Department of Veterans Affairs has not commented on this lawsuit.
This looks painful.
Yeah, it does.
One of President Donald Trump's campaign promises is paying off.
Build up our military bigger and better and stronger than ever before.
Uniformed service members will see their paychecks go up by 2.4% starting this week. This is the result of an executive order signed last month. It's the largest increase since 2010.
All right, when Syria gassed its own people last year, President Trump dropped 59 Tomahawk missiles on the country. Well, brand new video suggests that it might have just happened again. So how should the president respond this time? Counterterrorism expert Jim Hansen weighs in next.
And this is CNN. The network refers to a top White House communications official as Raj, whatever his name is. Sarah Sanders, Epic Response.
Deadly attacks from the Assad regime.
This as brand new video shows President Assad is still gassing his people with deadly sarin chlorine. The last time this happened, President Trump sent a clear and strong message, dropping 59 Tomahawk cruise missiles. So what happens next?
Here now to weigh in, a U.S. Army Special Forces veteran who has conducted counterterrorism operations himself. Jim Hansen, thank you so much for coming on this morning. We're seeing evidence of this happening once again. The president was always critical of Obama and how he wimped out of that red line. He dropped the 59 missiles as right after this happened last time. Are they probably in the process right now of evaluating this one and making a decision?
Absolutely. I mean, the first thing they have to do is confirm what actually happened. Right now, we're dealing with cell phone video footage and reports, from the Syrian white helmets, who are not always the most reliable. They've got their own agenda. However, if this is confirmed as an attack by the Syrian army using chemical weapons, it puts President Trump in a difficult position. We're trying to negotiate an end to the conflict in Syria, and that requires help from both the Russians and the Syrian regime itself. So this may put him in the position of having to do some damage to them right in the middle of those negotiations.
And for those people who don't know, how much of a factor is Russia in this situation?
They're a massive factor. I mean, for all intents and purposes, Syria is a puppet state of Russia and, to another extent, Iran. The Russians negotiated long-term leases on their warm water port, which they're very fond of, and also an airbase. So it's hard to believe that Assad would go ahead and authorize any kind of chemical weapons attack without the assent of the Russians. Now, that really puts President Trump in the position of having to stare down the Russian bear again and point out that we're not going to tolerate that. That is unacceptable in any way, and that may throw the ability to negotiate an end to this right out the window.
Well, you know, the rebels in this country are just about beat. I mean, they've been pushed basically backed into a corner in this. I think this particular area might be one of the last bastions of hope for this attempted revolution to overthrow the Assad regime. Are you worried also about, I mean, it seems like this is just about over as a conflict, but are you worried about a greater scale of, with all the tension in the world right now, some kind of an alliance forming between Syria, Iran, North Korea, maybe Russia? I mean, this is kind of the bubblings of what would make a world war in a much worse situation, right?
It could, which is one of the reasons President Trump will be a little bit, not tentative. He's not a tentative kind of guy. I think any decision will be decisive, but it may not be an attack. It may not be another rain of Hellfire missiles and Tomahawks coming down. This may be something that happens behind the scenes to ensure that it doesn't, raise up to another level and create a broader conflict. But the idea that the Russians, the Iranians, and Assad still in power are an axis in the Middle East causing trouble is not something that President Trump's going to tolerate. So there will be a response. The question is, will it be public and will it cause smoking rubble, or will this be something he negotiates behind the scenes?
Right. And do you think retaliation is the answer yet again?
If it turns out that they used chemical weapons after he was 100% clear, and as you mentioned, unlike Obama, willing to go ahead and make a red line a real thing, then I think people better watch to see whether chocolate cake is on the menu the next time he visits Mar-a-Lago, because that's what happened the last time. He ordered some chocolate cake, showed it to the Chinese president, and then things started blowing up in Syria. That's something the Syrians need to be very cognizant of.
Yeah, and he does not want to appear weak on foreign policy, on messing around with these other world leaders. He does not like to show a weakness there. So, Jim Hansen, thank you so much for coming on this morning. We appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
The late Justice Antonin Scalia found President Trump refreshing. That's according to a brand new memoir out today. The book, Nino and Me, is a detailed account of the friendship between Scalia and author Brian Garner. Justice Scalia opening up, speaking about President Trump in the early days on the campaign trail, calling him unfiltered and something more genuine than a candidate whose every utterance is airbrushed.
All right, starting in less than an hour, personal cell phones will no longer be allowed in the West Wing of the White House. Phones not issued or authorized by the White House will be banned Monday through Friday from 6 until 8 p.m., the working hours. Reporters can only bring their phones into the West Wing for work or with an escort. The ban, announced last week, it's an attempt to prevent all these leaks of classified information that have been pouring from this administration.
Well, how about this? A wonderful surprise from the White House coming in the mail for one newly married couple.
Yeah, Brianna and Timothy Dargert getting this congratulatory letter from President Trump and First Lady Melania sent to their Chicago home after they decided to mail their wedding invitation to the Oval Office on a whim.
The letter saying in part, quote, "We join your family and friends in celebrating this joyous occasion and your love and commitment to one another." Very cool.
They also got a toaster. That I'm joking about, in case you couldn't tell. Turning to extreme weather, massive mountains of thick ice piling more than 30 feet in Ohio. Look at that.
This rare sight on the shores of Lake Erie, just one of the many areas dealing with frozen rivers and flooding. Now the threat of more ice and snow as another winter storm works its way up the East Coast. Meteorologist Janice Dean tracking it for us now. Good morning, Janice.
Yeah, here we go again, especially across the south. We've got some southern snow happening, and look at the current wind chill, what it feels like. Minus 17 in Minneapolis, but look at Tulsa, minus 8. It feels like 10 in Dallas, 14 in Midland. So that Arctic air has plunged southward, and along with that, some wintry weather. So we have winter storm advisories for central and northern Texas, all the way up towards the eastern part of the Mississippi River Valley. So winter storm warnings, and then they extend up towards the northeast, because we're going to get in on this as well. It's not going to be another bomb cyclone, but it is going to cause some travel problems, especially across the I-95 corridor as we get into overnight tonight and into Wednesday. And I just checked in with Houston Airport, 40% cancellations there. So check with your airline, certainly, if you're traveling today. Future radar, it'll be out of here by Thursday, but we've got another storm system that's going to move across the northwest. That's going to be our next weather maker as we head into the weekend and early next week. Your forecast snowfall, again, not a whole lot of snow with this, but nuisance snow, especially across areas that don't typically see a lot of snow and ice. at any point during the year. Back to you, Rob and Jillian.
Enough to make it annoying.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Jana.
Of course.
I am so excited about this story. Most dog owners would rather hang out with their pets than people.
That's a no-brainer, right? That's according to a new study which found more than half of Americans would skip out on human commitments specifically to get some quality time with their dog.
The research was done by Link AKC, a company that makes smart collars, and also found that the bond between people and their dog improves mental and emotional health.
So we asked, do you prefer your dog's company over people in general? And most of you said yes.
That's right. Valerie on Facebook says our dogs are family, and I agree fur babies make better company than humans.
And Taylor here with a good point, posting, I prefer my pets as they do not own iPhones or have any type of political opinion. That's
True.
brilliant.
And Peyton's owner tweeting, quote, I love him more than myself. So yes. And I know, Rob, you know this, and everybody here at work knows this. That's my dog, Tyler, Welsh Corgi. He's going to be 14 in a week and a half. He's an old man. He's an old dude. And I go home on weekends sometimes just to hang out with him.
You go home every weekend.
Actually,
to hang out with
my mom always jokes, you come home just to see Tyler because he's
That's right.
my family. And
That's
I'm like,
right.
Yep.
Well, you prefer the dog over your parents.
Oh, it's my baby.
Understandably so, just like everybody else. Cute dog, 37 minutes after the hour, the deadly flu outbreak. It's very bad this year, and it's just claimed another life. How the government is scrambling to respond this morning.
An officer jumping into action to save a choking toddler on his first day on the job.
Our first reaction, all three of us stood right up. All three of us officers sitting there have a daughter, and all of us looked back after it and said, hey, what if that was our daughter?
Meet the man being hailed a hero. Officer Richard Mayer joins us live next.